there are a few of my Kickstarter backers and some members of my Discord that I've worked with, and the stories that they've told me, and I get emotional about it, because like being told, like hearing that my game was able to, like, it helped somebody laugh for the first time after having to go through a very intense surgery to have a brain tumor removed, and then not being able to feel that joy, and then playing my game and laughing for the first time was just like the most rewarding thing. Like, it just feels so good to know that what I've done has helped.
Hi everyone, I'm joined today by Joe Picknell, the developer behind the Edge of Allegoria. Thank you so much for sitting with me today, Joe. I know it's your morning, it's my morning-ish too.
All good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, we worked that out. So, okay, we'll just start things off by saying that, you know, like this interview is recorded on the 19th of November. However, it is going to come out when the Edge of Allegoria is released, which is the 4th of December, 2024. So for people who aren't aware, go ahead and get the game on Steam, because I've played the demo and it looks amazing. And I was just saying to Joe before, I stopped playing the demo, not because I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I was like, no, I want to experience the whole thing. So I didn't finish the demo. I left it sort of halfway. But I want to ask Joe, I want to ask you to sort of tell me a little bit about the origins of the development of the game, and just actually a little bit before that, what's your background when it comes to game development? And yeah.
Well, I started making games. I was like 14, 15 years old, and I actually started because I used to watch a lot of those. Remember those the Flash animations? It was like the stick figures fighting each other, like the kung fu stick figures on like Newgrounds and like
Right.
E-Bombs World and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make those originally, and I used, because I didn't have Flash on my computer, but I did have PowerPoint, and I figured out how to make things appear on the screen in sequence. So I would make the stick figures in each slide, and then just like layer these like hundreds of stick figures in PowerPoint, and then program them as a slideshow to play the animations. Wow. I was like, I need some sort of better animation software than PowerPoint. So I was looking online and found Game Maker because it had animation capabilities in it. And then I was like, well, hey, it also makes video games, so I'll give that a try. And just playing around, my brother and I would make just like little, 14, 15-year-old kind of games back in the early 2000s, and it kind of just became a hobby from there. I fell in love with pixel art and just like the little animations, like all the retro games from when I was a kid. Just I wanted to make stuff like that, and it's just sort of was a hobby of mine for years and years and years. And then I think it was during the pandemic, I decided, I'm gonna see if I can't make like a real commercial release. So I actually started working on a totally different game with one of my coworkers at my old day job. He was doing the writing because he would write like short stories and novelettes and stuff as his kind of focus. And I just loved doing art and music and programming, but I wasn't confident in my own writing. So I was like, this is perfect. You do the writing, I'll do everything else, and then we'll make a game. But creative differences, different levels of passion. This is like making games is something that I've always wanted to do. And he was like not as invested in it as I was. But it ended up just sort of fizzling out and falling apart. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go off on my own. I made a pixel art Instagram account, just playing around with pixel art, learning, getting it a little bit more refined from where I was at. And I did a few game jams on itch.io, just to kind of dip my toes into the whole game dev, the online community with that, because like up until that point, I had never shared any of my work online. I'd never done anything online. So I kind of tested that out, and I was sharing stuff on my Instagram. And one day I made a little mock-up of a battle scene that had like a goblin coming out fighting the fisherman guy, and the sprites like haven't really changed all that much since that very first kind of battle mock-up that I did. But it was like, oh shit, it's a fucking goblin, I'm gonna fucking die. And at the time, because my account was so small, I got 12 likes on that instead of my usual 6, and it was like, okay, well, I guess this is my life now. I'm gonna be making this for the next 3.5 years. And it actually originally started, I intended to make a farming simulator, because I saw the popularity of that and was like, oh, this is going to be great. But of course, the adult kind of more mature thing, like that mature leaning subject matter, things like that, was always in my mind that I wanted to do something like that. So having the swearing and having, maybe it's not necessarily the same kind of farms you'll find in some of the farming simulators. Sure. Maybe growing some questionable plants, but making it that sort of like cozy style thing. But then once I saw, oh yeah, cool, 12 people like this, I decided, I'm gonna make a turn-based RPG, because I wanted to have some kind of twist or some kind of change to that whole farming sim style, and then I just dove headfirst right into it. It's like, no, you know what, I'm making an RPG adventure. I've always wanted to make something like that, and I knew how much work it was going to be going into it. You hear all the time online as an indie dev that's just getting into it, that you want to avoid RPGs for your first game. And it's not technically my first game. I've been making games for like 20 years now. So I was like, I have the skills enough. I've never tried doing this because I know how much time it's going to take to make it. But if I want to make a real RPG, if I want to make a real game, I'm gonna do this. That being said, it is also very heavy on like dialogue and writing and the story and stuff like that. And that was the one thing that I was not confident about. So it's like I kind of took a risk on that. But I decided, like, I'm not going to, I had heard that old adage that, write what you know. And I know that, people talk, like, people swear all the time. People, we can pretend all we'd like that we're, nice, proper people, but, behind closed doors and, when no one's looking, it's, everybody's swearing up a storm.
I can relate to this. As a primary school teacher, I can tell you at work, I am a completely different person to the guy who's playing video games, playing Diablo 4 and getting his ass kicked, and
100%.
It's like
man.
A completely different thing. So I can totally relate to that. So when would you say when did the ball start rolling in terms of development for the game?
It really like, I know it was like 5 days. It was 5 days after my wife and I got married back in 2021. It was like I turned a page in my life. I did this new beginning. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna focus on this. I'm gonna chase my dreams. And I was working on it part-time since August 26th, 2021.
Wow. So would you say this is like, are you still, is this still sort of like a side project, or are you full-time working on this?
I mean, it is my main focus. Like, I think, like, because I have a new day job now.
Okay.
but my day job is now like my side even though it's like a full-time job, I still consider that my side gig. Like I started on it part-time because I was working at my old job, 40 hours a week, all that. And I'd wake up really early in the morning and get like 2 or 3 hours in before my workday started, and then shut down, dinner time with the family, spend time with the kids, and then they all go to bed, and then back to working on the game for 3 or 4 hours. And then, wake up and do it the next day, and then get a little extra time on the weekends. And then I got laid off from my job in spring of 2023. And thankfully I'd been there for a really long time. So, severance and savings and all of that stuff, it all worked out that I was able to go full time for a little while. But I did end up running out of money, as one does. And I ended up doing a Kickstarter, and that was kind of like my last ditch. This is my last chance to get to work full time on this, because I'd already worked about almost a year full time. And then I did the Kickstarter. That was successful, thankfully. Huge shout out to my community for really like banding together at the last minute and pushing us over the finish line. It was just, it felt so good. I love my community so goddamn much. And that really pushed us over the top. And then from there, I've been working, I started a full-time job in the summertime after that, just because, the economy, cost of living, it was like, my budget was not anticipating, the world going to shit. So,
I don't think anyone was budgeting for that.
But it's still like that full-time job has, it took the place as like a side gig. Even though it is full-time, it's still not my main focus and priority. Like the game is still 100% where my mind is at most of the time.
And I think that's so interesting in terms of what you said about the mindset. It's like, like my main goal is what I'm working on, even though like it might seem like it's just a little game, but like your perception of it is, I know this is my main thing, and whatever else I'm doing on the side is to support that, which is, I think, really inspiring. Something I should probably do as well when it comes to my YouTube channel and things like that. So I wanted to ask you about the influences and the inspirations behind the game. So you mentioned a little bit about like how you like the pixel art and things like that, and obviously the aesthetics of the game also is very much like reminiscent of, I suppose, like the 90s like Game Boy Color-ish. So tell me a bit about the influences and like maybe some game inspirations behind your game.
I mean, there's one big one that I'm just not going to say. A certain monster catching franchise that shall remain unnamed. There's definitely some visual inspiration from that, but I do take a lot of inspiration from a lot of different places. I mean, it's an indie games, and it's got that kind of like quirky humor. There's some other kinds of humor in there as well, but that little bit of silliness I get from things like Earthbound and Undertale, things like that. I wanted to make a farming simulator, so some Harvest Moon inspiration in there, Stardew Valley, that kind of thing. And then I was playing a lot of Elden Ring while I was developing this, so there's some osmosis of the DNA in there. I mean, it's a turn-based RPG, not a giant action RPG. So the translation is, it's not the most direct translation, but there is definitely some Souls-like DNA in there, at least a little bit. But then I also took a lot of inspiration from like just different media and stuff like that. Like I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, so there's some Tarantino references in there. I used to watch a lot of like top 10 Easter eggs in old retro games, or well, the developers hid this and we've never found it until today. Like I used to watch a lot of those videos on YouTube with my son. Like he got really into that sort of thing. So it kind of like ingrained in my mind that if you're going to make a video game, you have to put those sorts of things in it, like pop culture references and just like little developer nods to, movies, TV shows, whatever. And so I filled the world with all sorts of stuff from every aspect of my life.
So it kind of makes me wonder, because you mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of inspirations and influences behind the game, and I'm wondering, like, where do you sort of where do you draw the line in terms of, this is something that I like from another game, and this is something different that I want to do with my game? How do you mix the two together, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, it's in the trailer where it says, get ready for a turn-based RPG like everything you've seen before. I'm not trying to break the mold. I'm not trying to do something different. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm very much if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think in doing that and just being like, you know what? No, I'm not going to try to be some innovative genius that changes the face of gaming. I'm just I know what I like and I know what I want to do. And finding all of the different kind of gameplay mechanics and things like that fit together, it becomes something new by itself, but it was never intending to be some crazy new innovation or anything like that.
So we talked about the influences and the inspiration. So, and I know you mentioned about how you work with somebody else on a different game. But what I'm wondering is, like, what was the initial concept behind the game? Is this related to that post that you mentioned that you made with the battle scene?
Yeah.
Like, would that? Yeah.
So, originally it was going to be a farming simulator. I was going to have, it was going to be a mature farming simulator. Weed is legal in Canada, so I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna just go, dive into that and just really lean into that whole thing. But I wanted to have some kind of mechanic that, made it interesting. You can't just be, sowing seeds and watering your crops and doing all that sort of thing. So I wanted to have some kind of battle mechanic to keep it engaging and, entertaining for at least some period of time. But then once I made that post and was like, it's going to be a turn-based RPG, I decided that was going to be the focus of the game, was a classic RPG adventure. And then it just kind of went from there. Like, it was like, there's too much now. When I shifted the focus, like, there's too much that goes into a turn-based RPG and having these mechanics and everything like that to worry about farming mechanics and things. There's like, I'm just one guy. I got to pick one or the other. And I personally enjoyed playing games like Final Fantasy, Earthbound, things like that when I was a kid. And so I just gravitated to the things that I enjoyed more, because first and foremost, like, this game is, for me, like, I am my target audience. I didn't really care at the beginning whether or not anyone else liked it, and even now there's still that, just like, if you don't like it, if it's not for you, that's fine. I'm the one, like, I'm making this game for me before anybody else. So if I like it, then I did my job, really. So that was kind of why I shifted away from what I thought was marketable, quote unquote, into something that I personally wanted to see.
If I could just build on that, I know you mentioned about, like, you said that this is a game that I'm making, like, I would play that game, that for yourself. But you have built a community behind this game, and I'm just wondering, how much of their input have you taken into consideration in terms of making a game that, like, you would like to play, but also something that caters to what the community wants as well?
Oh, so much. Like, I can't thank my Discord community and the people on social media enough. They've been such an enormous support. There were times where I got a little annoyed with them, where they were like, you should add this, you should add that, and then I'm like, shut up, I'm not done adding the last thing you suggested I add. I remember being very like resistant to a lot of things, but then it's like finally I'm just like, okay, fine, I'll add it in, and now it's like, okay, this is my favorite part of the game now. Like, my community has been extraordinarily helpful in turning it into what it is today, adding little quality of life improvements, like when you go into a shop, you don't have to sell each item one by one. I originally was like super resistant to having any item information on the screen when you went into a shop. Like, you just had to buy it if you wanted to find out what an item did. It was like, shit ain't free, man. If you want the info, you got to pay for it. Which, from a thematic point of view and like the whole theme of the game, it makes sense, but at the same time it's just super frustrating that you have to buy the ticket to know what you're going to be getting out of it. So it's like, I finally caved and was like, okay, you guys are right, I should do that. When you open up a chest and you find a new item, having that little prompt that says, you just picked up the long sword, would you like to equip it? And having that kind of just little quality of life touches that make the game more smooth and stuff like that. Like, my community has been extremely helpful in just giving me feedback and ideas of things to just make it better and more fun to play. Honestly, they're the best. I love them so much.
Shout out to the Edge of Allegoria Discord channel. I did go in there. I don't know if you noticed, like, you said hello to me in the welcome channel. I was just lurking a bit to see what's happening in there, and
I always welcome. I always got to do a personal welcome. I don't like those little stickers. You just click a button. I feel like it's lazy. Like, I'll type out welcome.
I noticed, like, I was like, oh wow, like, I've never experienced that type of like I was like, it's like Joe says like welcome. Like, I was like, okay, like, that's different. So you're in charge of writing, coding, art direction, art design, music, if I mentioned that already or not.
Everything.
Right. So PR, community.
Not so much anymore. I did sign with a publisher
cool. Okay.
late last spring, early last summer. So they've kind of stepped in to help me out with the marketing and the PR side of things. But for the first couple years of development, it was 100% me for everything, and then they handle the outreach and advertising and marketing side of things now. I still do the social media, I still do the Discord, like, that's still all me. They know so much more than like, when I first kind of met them and they explained what they do to me, I was like, I didn't even know half this stuff existed. Like, I didn't know like there's different journalists and like different ways to reach out to people, like, right over my head. So they've been extraordinarily helpful.
That's amazing. And it's like I was saying, with all these different hats that you have to wear, like, when do you go, okay, like, I can do this, and this, and now I'm at a point where I want to put this part of the game, I want to hand it over to someone else?
I don't work well with others. That's something that I'm currently working on as a person. Especially when it comes to creative things, I can be a little bit of a control freak. So handing things over to other people is just extremely hard for me. I've always been that way. I had like a band in high school. Me and my buddies, we would jam and stuff like that, and I took the role as like, okay, this is our image, this is how we sound, this is what we're doing, and they were very like, okay, all right, man, whatever you say. Thankfully, or else it would have been messy. But when it comes to creative sort of things, like, I have a very clear vision of what I want, and it's very hard for me to stray from that. And my Discord community has really helped me kind of work through that with their suggestions of things to add, and I've been so resistant to it, and then I finally add it and realize, okay, that was actually a fantastic idea. So, but I mean, at this point, handing anything off to anybody else, I mean, I still do everything, like everything's all me anyways. So like really towards the end of development, there's like the passing over to do some testing, and then let me know if there's anything that's broken or anything like that, and then I'll fix it. I'm still very possessive of the whole project.
Did you find any? Sorry, finish.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you go
I
ahead.
was just gonna ask, did you find any part of this? Because to me, it's like I'll give you an example with like my work with the YouTube thing that I'm doing. Like I'm in the process of asking someone else to handle the editing part of this, and that's because like there's so much research and thing goes into the interviews and the reviews and things like that I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm not the best at editing videos. I'm gonna focus on what I'm good at, and I'm gonna pass the thing.
I suppose the passing over like the marketing and the PR stuff, when my publisher Cobra Teku Games kind of stepped in, that was actually a huge relief for me, because I knew there was something I should have been doing. I knew there were things that would help get the word out a little bit more. So it was like, these people are professionals. This is what they do. And it's like having that faith in someone and their skills, that they've got a proven, record that they know what they're doing. It's like, okay, they know better than me. I'm gonna just take the reins and let me focus on the stuff that I enjoy doing, because the marketing and the PR side of things, it's never been my favorite thing to do. I don't like to be like, oh, look at me, look how great this is, I'm the best. It's like, no, like that's not. I like to, here, look, I hope you like it. So they've really been able to kind of step things up a little bit for me, and I knew that was what I needed, so it was easy for me to hand over the reins for something that I personally struggle with. And it's been great.
Can I just ask, in terms of the music and the sound design, like what's been your process?
So the music was like, I think when I painted myself into a corner when it came to the music, and just because of the Game Boy design, like the sound design and everything like that, I wanted to try and stay as authentic as I could. So I've got like a Game Boy chip emulator that I plug into my music program, that I've used to make all the stuff. That being said, I also have a toddler, and all of his toys make really annoying sounds sometimes, just with those like really crunchy speakers, and the drool from when he was little has kind of gotten into him and made him extra crunchy. So I wanted to incorporate some more palatable sounds into the game as well, so that because it's like, when I turn off working on the game and then I go and hang out with my kid, I'm hearing the same chip tune kind of noises. I'm like, I want this to turn off now. So it's like, in my game, I've the way that I've kind of done it is I've incorporated some of the older sounding Game Boy style music, but with a little bit of a modern flourish, a little bit of modern flavor, just because my old ears, they need something a little smoother to get through it.
It's just one of those things that stood out to me when I was playing it. It's like, it's this constant, and it did remind me of the Game Boy. Like, it really like stays with you even after like you put the game away for a bit. It's like I can sort of still hear it. And I wanted to talk to you about I suppose your favorite part of it would be writing. There is a bit of a story, and like I said, I really liked it. I thought at the beginning, I was like, this is a bit like cynical, and it's a bit, like he's the main character, he's just so down.
Yeah.
And
I mean that's part of the theme too, though, because like you play as a fisherman from a small town who's been fishing in an empty pond for years, and
I love it.
it kind of was like the reflection of my own life. I had worked at a desk job for years, and just like the main character in the game, felt like I was spinning my wheels. And I feel like that's something that's very relatable. And I think the pandemic especially it gave people a lot, a new perspective of, like, what am I doing with my life? Like the whole world can shut down at a moment's notice with no warning. And it's like you've been doing the same thing for years and years and years, and then suddenly it all comes crashing down. Was it worth it to do the thing that you've been doing all this time? And that kind of like there was like a moment during the pandemic where my mind was just like, I need to do what I love doing and not chain myself to a desk working for somebody at a job that I hate. I wanted to kind of make that the initial spark that sets off the story. He's been fishing in that empty pond, and then one day he just decides, you know what? I'm going to go out in the world. I'm going to make a name for myself. Famous last words. What's the worst that could happen? The worst can definitely happen. And it's sort of like a bit of a midlife crisis kind of situation where he just goes on a bit of a murderous rampage. He's trying to make his big change. He's killing all the local wildlife. And then he gets swept up in sort of the bigger world of things, which is kind of reflective of how development has gone with this game. It started out as a small, like just this sort of offhanded post on Instagram that people happened to like, and then it went from there. And then next thing I know, I've got a Kickstarter, and then I'm going and doing shows. I've got a publisher, and now the game's coming out. And it's like you kind of get swept up once you start doing the things you love. Eventually the things you love start working for you. So that's just a little theme that's kind of it's very subtle, but it's kind of in there that I want to just make sure that if people have dreams, chase them, because you never know where they'll take you.
And that's, I mean, like, you mentioned this, like, it's part of your game's advertising. This ain't no fucking kids game. And I was going to ask you, like, okay, like, obviously, like, there's, like, swearing and things like that. But what else is in the game that makes it not a kids game? And I suppose that's, like, what you just mentioned. I work with kids, and I promise you, not a single one of them would understand any of that. So,
and that's kind of, like, I wanted to take my life I mean, I'm 34 right now, but I feel like I've already lived a very full life. I spent a lot of time working, like I worked in a grocery store, I worked in food service, I've worked in customer service, like telemarketing and stuff like that. I've talked with hundreds and thousands of people. And the way people talk, the way people speak, the way people are, especially when they think that nobody else is listening, it's very, like, I wanted to kind of get that out there. The cynicism that comes with the game, I mean, that comes from being yelled at for 10, 11 years working in a telemarketing job. Is just eventually you just start hating everybody. There's nothing for it. And that's, like, I wanted to bring that kind of the disillusionment and the disappointment in the way things have kind of become. And I wanted to, because it is a sentiment. It may not be everybody's sentiment, but there's definitely a sentiment for a lot of people my age and in my generation that, the world, we were told the world was going to be one way, and it's the total opposite. And that was kind of what I wanted to bring to the world of Allegoria is, no, this world, I'm going to tell you what it is, and it's exactly what it is. It is a terrible place. You don't want to be there, but you also do, because it's, there's something else going on underneath.
What did you find most challenging in terms of, because you said you initially had someone else doing the writing and you decided to sort of take charge of it yourself. Did you find that challenging? Did you enjoy the challenge? Like, how did you overcome it?
Well, yeah, with the previous game, it was like I had I had no confidence in my writing at all. I never thought that I could come up with an engaging or interesting or immersive story. And so that was why with the previous game, totally different situation and everything there. I kind of was like, here you go, man, you take the reins on that. I can't. And then when I decided, you know what, I'm not going to be able to find someone, at least not easily and not imminently, that has the same passion and drive for this. I mean, now knowing where to look, I could definitely find another developer that would, have that same passion for it. But at the time, just getting into it and just learning about, the online indie game dev community, I felt very alone. So I was like, I'm going to have to do this myself. And it was that adage of write what you know that I just I held on to that and was just like, you know what, screw whatever anybody else thinks. I'm just going to write the way that I speak, and I'm going to write the way that people I've met speak. I'm going to just let my subconscious I'm not going to worry about some kind of deeper meaning or anything like that. I know it's going to be there, but I'm not going to try to force a theme into it. I'm just going to let my mind go where it is. And then after the game's done, then I'll go through and I'll analyze it myself. And I'm the way that I'm looking at it is as a tool for sort of introspection and self-reflection, where I wrote this big long story and I poured so much of my own experiences and my own kind of perspectives and everything into the narrative, that I want to go back and play it again and then be like, okay, so this is why, maybe this is why I wrote that the way that I wrote that. And so I can use it as a way to kind of figure myself out, because therapy's fucking expensive. And but I know that there's these strategies that people use, like journaling and things like that, where you write down your feelings for the day and then you go back, months, years later to read over it. It's like, okay, this is what I was feeling in that time. And now I'm feeling this way, and you draw the connections and figure out what, So I'm using it as a way to kind of work on myself. There's that whole like boys don't cry kind of thing. Guys are expected to keep their emotions in check and not show weakness or anything like that. So I want to kind of put that in there as just like, I've let myself be vulnerable as I'm writing this, and I with no regard for the fact that other people are going to be looking at it. So, I feel a little exposed with this game. But at the same time, I'm doing it for the purpose of making myself better as a person. And then if people like it, then they like it. Hey, it's, that's just an added bonus.
Yeah, man. I think that's why it's like, from what I've played so far, it's like, it's what you said about the vulnerability that you've put into the game. It comes through and it makes it relatable, because it's like you said, like real feelings are in there, So I don't think you have anything to worry about. If anything, it's inspiring,
And there's that kind of like, there is that layer on top, like all of the swearing, all of the crude humor, everything like that. That's a defense mechanism. Like that's something that a lot of people do to kind of keep their own stuff hidden away, and they put up an image, they put up a front to kind of keep people back so that they can't get through to the mushy, soft insides. And that was kind of what I wanted to express in a very, there's a lot of layers to this. So I wanted to have that in there as like, hey, your guard's up. But then as you progress through the game, you kind of become desensitized a little bit to some of the more frequent things that, like in the battle scenes where it's like, oh fuck, it's a troll or whatever. You kind of become desensitized to that sort of thing. But the dialogue of the NPCs and the story of the game starts to shift into something else as you get later on into it. And the tone kind of changes as you go through. So it starts very like crass, in your face, and then it becomes something else.
Oh man, that's I look
Your
forward to it.
purpose becomes very clear. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, I maybe put in like maybe 2 hours into the demo. I beat the first boss, I suppose, when you go into that dungeon, and like, when you go into the shop, the first one, and then you head north and you go through, like, you kill a bunch of goblins.
Yep.
And then you go into this dungeon. I died to that boss maybe like I don't know if I should say it. Like, I don't know. I died to it like maybe like 3 times, maybe.
It's not, yeah,
But
it's a challenge. I
it's
mean, it's not a kid's game,
it's not. That's right. But that's what I was gonna say in terms of not being a kids game. It's like usually people expect a lot of gore and blood, and there is a level of that in there. But I'm just so I'm so fascinated by all the other elements you put in there to make it an adult game. I think it's very clever. Now I want to talk about a little bit about the aesthetics of it. So my question is like, what made you, obviously you said the Game Boy influences and things like that, but what about things like the color palette? What about things like the world design and things like that?
So the color palette was actually that was a choice. It was when I was getting into pixel art, and I was challenging myself to try different styles, do different sorts of things. Like, up to that point, I had very much just been like, I hadn't thought about color because I'm colorblind to a degree. So just a little added accessibility feature. The fact that I'm colorblind means that the game is already colorblind accessible. But I wanted to challenge myself to do pixel art with limitations and things like that. And because what I found just as an artist and as a person over the years, imposing some kind of limitation or having some kind of box you have to work in forces you to think outside of it to come up with creative solutions. And it kind of fosters a more creative approach when it comes to design or anything like that. So like, as I mentioned with the music, like painting myself into a corner with the Game Boy sounds and not being able to branch out too far. It's like, but maybe I could add some subtle things here and there that make it have that bit more modern feel, which is why when you get a status effect, the color palette changes and the music changes. It's kind of got that aspect to it as well, but it still feels authentic to that sort of nostalgic vibe where you only have 4 colors on the screen, and there's still that kind of limited-ish sound design as well. It was and I found that I really loved challenging myself to do that, and figuring out ways to make the level designs and make the character designs pop out and feel unique despite only having 4 colors. So it really forced me to get creative. I think I accomplished it for the most part. There may be some areas that might be a little bit repetitive, and it's kind of like comes with the territory of only having 4 colors to work with. And you're relying more on shapes and shading and shadow and stuff like that to communicate you're in a different environment. But I think that I did a fairly good job of kind of making the world feel organic as you're kind of traveling through. The overworld design, like the map designs, I knew I wanted a big world. I knew I wanted something that was open, more or less. And I played a lot of Minecraft years and years ago when it was huge, and did a lot of like the terraforming of the land, and you'd build a castle, and then you'd have to you flatten it out, and then you finish, and then you got to make it look like plant all the trees and everything. So I kind of brought some of that into it as well, of just like making it feel natural where the grass tiles are and the trees are and things like that. And then the dungeons, of course. So I've played a lot of RPGs. I've played a lot of video games. So I just kind of took that the philosophies and the design elements that I've experienced in the past and kind of made them my own and fit with the palettes and things that I have now.
Very cool. Can I just ask, as someone who knows almost next to nothing about art. um, why did you go with green being the main?
Well, green's my favorite color. So that really
enough.
helps.
Yeah.
If green was not my favorite color, I would have probably stopped developing this game a while ago. Um,
I can
so
imagine like a harsher color.
thankfully, I like green. So that helps. However, there are some interesting connections between the story and the inspiration behind it, and there's some numerology and some musical kind of stuff that goes into it. Green is the fourth color of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green. The fourth note in the C major scale is F, C, D, E, F. So all the music is in the key of F. The game comes out on December 4th, and there's just like the heart of the game. I'm looking at like Eastern kind of philosophies. The heart of the game, it's very green. So I wanted to. I've tied a lot of things into just the design stuff. I'd hoped that on some kind of like mystical level might help. Like people are going to be like, this guy's fucking crazy. But there's like these very interesting design choices that I made for a personal kind of spiritual level, thinking that it's, maybe I just took too many drugs in high school and I'm a little off the deep end. Or maybe it means something,
Right. And I just want to mention, anyone watching this, because I found this just absolutely insane, right? So there's over 145 monster types. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I found online, so maybe it's a bit out of date.
Over 145?
Yeah.
You're right.
31 dungeons, 41 boss fights. Those are big numbers.
Some of the boss fights, some of them you fight twice, and some of the bosses are just like super powered enemies. So I'm obviously the marketing is gonna like bump it up a little bit, but yeah, there's 145, more than 145 enemies in the game, including the bosses. There are 15 main dungeons and 16 secret dungeons. The 16 secret dungeons are like super. They're buffed up regular enemies, but they're technically boss fights. So
yeah.
For the marketing reasons, 41, and a few of the bosses you do fight twice. So yeah, I mean it's an RPG, man. Like that's kind of like. You gotta fill it up with stuff. There's 96 different weapons to collect. Each weapon comes with a battle skill, so there's 96 different attacks that you can learn. A bunch of the enemies have attacks that you can't learn, so there's way more attacks in the game than there are attacks you can learn. 57 pieces of armor. There's a whole bunch of healing items, junk items. It's an RPG. I was like, I sat down one day and was just like, okay, what do I need? I need cheese. I need a bottle of alcohol. I need to have, different items like horns and teeth and things like that, and just throw in as much as possible, because that's just what RPGs are. I played a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I had a Nintendo Power subscription when I was a kid, and my subscription was up for renewal right at the same time that Tactics Advance was coming out, and they offered, like, you got the subscription for the year, player's guide, and a copy of the game. And I got that, and that player's guide has actually been one of the big inspirations for me for, like, how many items I should add, because I remember just, like, poring over it, looking at all the maps, all of the, like, the graphs and the tables with all of the like the little weapon sprites and all their stats and everything. I was like, this is what I want to make. I want to do something like this. So that was kind of like, that's been the push for it is just like, I've played so many RPGs, I've got this player's guide, I know that RPGs have to have a lot of content, so it's just add and go and keep, make it bigger, make it more. And that was kind of what pushed it to the point that it's at now.
It just kind of this thing you mentioned about, okay, it's an RPG and it just comes with a shit ton of stuff, right? And this is something I've discussed before in my previous interview. So specific genres come with specific expectations. Like you mentioned, with RPGs, there's a lot of stuff in there. When do you decide to have those expectations in your game? When do you decide that, no, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing here? Like, how do you decide that what's going to be best for your game?
I kind of just ran out of ideas. Like, I was like adding stuff and more and more and more. And then I was like, okay, I'm just one guy. People will understand, hopefully. I wanted to put in a whole bunch of stuff, and then it was just like, okay, I ran out of steam. This is what you get. That was kind of my.
Well, I mean, in like a more general sense of the concept of like, I'm making an RPG, so it has to be pixel art, I suppose. But then you've made an RPG that's like typically catered to kids, but you've decided to go the other way. My question is like, how do you decide to push the boundaries within the expectations of a specific genre?
I mean, that is kind of, it's just the vibe that I bring to the game, I think, is just pushing boundaries has always been, and challenging ideas. Okay. I've always challenged myself to kind of go out of my comfort zone with things. I kind of have this bring it on, kind of come at me, you don't like it, whatever, like I am my target audience with this. And anybody else liking it or disliking it is kind of irrelevant, as long as it's made. I made it for myself, and then anybody else that likes it is just a bonus. That's kind of it's more of like a personal, like, hey, if you don't like it, come at me, I don't care. Like, this is it that's not my problem. Like, my game is for me. And if you don't like it, whatever. And that, I mean, I guess that kind of pushes people to, it's like I made what I want to make. It's more of like a personal challenge to people. Just like, accept, take it or leave it, whatever. It's not my problem.
I come at this from the perspective of someone who knows literally fucking nothing about game design. I love playing games, but I have no idea what goes behind it. And that was the whole idea behind starting up this series of talking to developers, really, because for myself, I want to learn not like how to do it, but like what's going on behind the scenes, kind of thing, So I'm just looking through my notes and I'm like, man, I must come across as some kind of like this nosy, like.
Not at all, man. Not at all. I don't. So like as a solo developer, it's lonely. I have a few developer friends, but we're all busy. We're all working on our own games. Like, every once in a while, we'll be like, hey, how did you do this? Or, one of my buddies actually helped me to come up with, he needed a break from his game. So I was like, well, here, can you play mine and let me know what you think, what I should add? And he was like, it would really punch it up if he had some like combo system or whatever. And he helped me to get that status effect combo system in place. He gave me some ideas for that. Shout out to Eric. He's developing Lucid. Phenomenal Metroidvania. Celesteoidvania, I should say. Talking shop with people, like my wife has no interest in video games. That's just not her thing. And like I'll come up from the basement after spending a whole day. It's like, I just figured out how to do this, and fixed all these bugs, and it's great. And she's like, okay, good for you, I guess. So it's like talking about this sort of thing. Like, I don't do it very often, so this is amazing. Like, if any questions you have,
perfect.
I'll try to impart my wisdom. Yeah. I am by no means an expert. Like, I've only made one game. Technically, I've made more, but like, this is only my first game, so I'm by no means some kind of industry professional. But whatever wisdom you can glean from my words, then
awesome.
If I've helped even a little bit, then I've done it.
Absolutely. Like, It's especially the things you mentioned about like the writing parts of it, and even like some of the things you mentioned about like accessibility in terms of the color palette and things. Like I would have never even known about that. So, and I'm sure there's other idiots out there like myself who would have been like, oh, okay, interesting.
Well, accessibility is kind of a thing that it sort of comes as you go. Like one of the things that I always had in mind from the beginning was localization and translation to different languages. Since this is coming out after the game's out, people will already know that it's been translated into German. My publisher is they're from Germany, so naturally German had to be translated. Fingers crossed we'll get it translated in some other languages sooner rather than later. But I mean, that was kind of something that I've always wanted to include, and just that got the ball rolling as like, okay, well, what other features, like when I started making the menu and the options, it's like, okay, what other features could I add into this? Things like the colorblind mode that a lot of games have. There's some features people have asked about, like some people find it difficult for to read the text on the screen, like the pixelated text, and especially with the way that the font is scaled and things like that, I can see how it's difficult. That is unfortunately not something that I have implemented as of yet. I never say never. There's some issues with that, getting it ready for release, so unfortunately you kind of get what you get with that. But that's something, it just sort of comes up naturally as you're developing. You know, a quick Google search of like, what options should I put in my game? But again, that's thankfully, I do also, as I mentioned, I do have some developer friends who, one of them was actually working on, like they had an accessibility checklist that they were adding to the game. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I should take a look at that. So it came up organically to have that. And I mean, the fact that I'm already like that, I am colorblind, and I struggled throughout the whole, like, designing all of the visual stuff like that to actually make sure that the colors were the colors I thought they were. Even with the only 4 colors, I still got confused. Like accessibility stuff like that, it's just part of it. You should never limit yourself in the creative process, and adding other things after the fact is always totally acceptable. Like it's just create, just do it, just make it happen, and then you worry about the other stuff later.
Yeah. I've just got a couple of questions about the game itself before we talk a little bit about, you know, we're getting closer to launch now. So I wanted to ask you about the gameplay mechanic. Like to me, this is brand new. Like what you've got in terms of the weapon mastery system, and Can I be honest? I loved it, like, because I'm the type of person who wants to try different weapons in games, but I don't want to lose the effects that I get with certain weapons, and it always pisses me off that I have to give up the weapon that I love for a different effect. So thank you for fixing my problem. But tell me what inspired you. Where does that come from? How did you...
well, actually, going back to that player's guide in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, in that was the inspiration for it. There's that job system in Final Fantasy.
I haven't played that one, to be honest, so that's probably...
I think it's also in Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 14. It's like a Final Fantasy kind of thing in at least a few of their titles. But weapons will have a skill. Some weapons, some don't. So it's like you find the right weapon, you use it, and you'll master it, and then you can use that skill without the weapon equipped. That was definitely a thing in Final Fantasy. Like armor and stuff, you would get like passive skills where you would like dodge arrows, or you'd be more likely to dodge arrows or something like that in those games. So I wanted to do something similar to that, except with a more like direct turn-based one-on-one kind of battle system. And like I originally, when I was designing that, I had set the mastery way too high. You would have to use an attack like 100 times and take 100 hits to be able to master your weapons or your armor. But I realized as a one-on-one RPG, you'd be stuck with the one weapon for way, way, way too long. And momentum was always kind of part of my design philosophy, because I know that turn-based RPGs can be slow and a bit of a grind and a little bit repetitive. Even this game, I'll fully admit, there's some times when, you know, things could be a little bit more snappy. Comes with the territory. It's an RPG. Sorry. I like grinding, so
Yeah.
you take it or leave it. But the one thing that I wanted to make sure to include for people who may not necessarily enjoy the grinding is having some kind of momentum. If you're not mastering a weapon, you're finding a new one. And if you're not finding a new weapon, you're leveling up. And if you're not leveling up, you're finding a secret dungeon or something like that. There's always some other next step to keep you kind of going and keep the momentum. And that momentum philosophy it translates right into the status effect combo system in the game as well. Is like you learn an attack that increases your enemy's susceptibility to a status effect, and then you follow up with an attack that inflicts the status effect, and then you follow up again with an attack that capitalizes on the status effect. So it encourages you to kind of keep going to the next turn. It's always the next battle, and then the next weapon, and then next armor, and you just kind of keep going and going and going. So I wanted to keep that momentum to the game, mostly just because I know that RPGs can get really stale sometimes. So I wanted to have that in there to keep people going.
Yeah, I admittedly, haven't played too much Final Fantasy. I've tried. The only one that really stuck with me is oh gosh, I forget what it's called. There's like a million of them, man. How do people keep track of which one's which? Honestly, I played one of
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Keep doing what works.
I've played the one of the more recent remakes on the PS5, and yeah, I love that one. I should probably get more into Final Fantasy by the sounds of it.
It's fantastic. I love that franchise.
I know you did talk about some of the challenges during development and things like that, but is there anything in particular that maybe, like, was there at any point where when you went, like, I don't want to do this anymore? How did you overcome that? You're laughing.
It at the beginning, it wasn't as frequent. Every once in a while, I would post something and I'd be super proud of it, and it wouldn't get the reaction that I thought it would, and it would just be like super demotivating. And it just, as development kind of went on and on and on, it started becoming a little bit more frequent, which is just kind of like it becomes a job at some point. Eventually it's like, I mean, I still love, I wouldn't trade this job for any other job. I love making games and I love doing this. This is my dream coming true, to do this. But at some point there does come a time where it's like, okay, I have fixed enough bugs. I'm ready to stop fixing bugs. But then you stuff keeps popping up and you have to fix it. And like even play testing and balancing, it's like, okay, I've been balancing and playing this game for 1,000 hours now. I'm ready to, move on to the next thing. And I think the biggest way that the best help that I've had to push through it has come from people around me that have kind of kept me on an even keel. My wife has been extraordinarily supportive throughout this entire thing. She's the absolute best. Shout out to my wife. I love her so goddamn much. I remember during the Kickstarter, it was looking really dicey there, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I should just call it and take the L and walk away for a little bit and just put the game on the back burner, and hopefully I'll come back to it and we'll be fine. It's still going to come out. It's just going to take extra long to do it. And she's like, you are going to hate yourself if you like, you need to be able to look back and say, I did that. Whether or not you succeeded, just see it through to the end, and whatever happens, happens. It doesn't matter. Just do it. And then it turned out to be a success. So she's like really kind of kept my head on straight as I'm going through, just like, no, you started this, you're going to finish this. You're doing great. Just keep at it. You'll be fine. She hasn't done me wrong since. So
fantastic.
It's been fantastic. It's been great. And then the community on top of it too, like every once in a while I'll get some comment or some kind of, like I'll get a comment or I'll get a message or I'll get something that's just like, I love this so much. This is what I've been waiting for. I've never seen a game like this. No one's had the balls to make a game with, like something like this as, crass and rude as you have. It's what I've always wanted. And it's just like that kind of ignites the spark and helps me, stay motivated. It's like, even when I don't want to do it, I think to all of the people that are looking forward to it. I think about, my family, my kids, and it's just like, I owe it to everybody to get this game across the finish line, even if it kills me, because there's so many people that are counting on me or people that are looking forward to it, that I take myself out of the equation. Even if I am just grinding my face on the pavement trying to get through the day, it's knowing that there are people out there that they want this to happen.
Yeah.
It has helped carry me through the hard parts.
Amazing. That's awesome. And I suppose we can now maybe shift a little bit more towards not the end of it, I suppose it's like the beginning of something else with the release on the 4th. Because like I said at the beginning, this is being recorded on the 19th of November, so we still got a couple of weeks left until release. What are you doing? How is things looking?
So like for the game, the release for the game?
Yeah. So in terms of development and just getting things ready for release, I suppose.
Yeah, right now it's just like I was recording something. I was just recording some footage that I needed, and I found a bug this morning as I was recording the footage. I mean, I changed some settings so that I wasn't recording some things, but in doing that, I kind of uncovered something I missed because it was buried underneath another thing. So I ended up, right now it's just cleaning up little things, tying up loose ends. Like it's more or less finished. It's 100%. You can get all the achievements, you can play all the way through. It's just every once in a while there's a rock you can walk through or a tree that isn't blocking properly or something like that, or you warp slightly to the left in this one area because you stepped on the tile. It's like fixing up the super minor code, also attack combos and stuff like that, just making sure that when you pull off a combo or when an enemy pulls off a combo, that it's doing the right thing. So there's a lot of play testing and bug fixes that are happening kind of behind the scenes at this point. But it's really just getting that final pass through to make sure that everything is going to function, so that so I don't have a day one patch that comes out. I mean, I'm sure there will be. Like, I'm only one guy. I do have some playtesters in my Discord who are helping out as well. But we're a very small team. If the game is going to sell as well as I hope, then there's going to be a lot more people playing this than the handful that are right now. So it's just trying to avoid making too much work for myself after the game comes out to fix everything that I might have missed. It's like, okay, now I got to go through the checklist of, does this attack work? Does this attack work? Does this attack work? If I string these attacks together, what happens? Is this, is the animation okay? Is the sound all right? And it's just going through the checklist over and over again to make sure that it's all as good as it can possibly be. And then when the game comes out, obviously people are going to find stuff. There's that developer meme, the video where it's like it's got the holes on top of the container and the person's putting the blocks through, and it's like, oh, it's a circle block, it goes in the square hole, and the triangle block, it goes in the square hole. And people are not going to do what I intend them to do, and that's totally anticipated. So it's just making it so that if people do things differently than what I want them to do, it's not going to break, really, is what it comes down to at this point. And then as for the future, for things that I have planned on the horizon, I have no set concrete plans right now. It's kind of just like play it by ear, see what happens. I would love to get this onto consoles eventually, but unfortunately there's no guarantee. We're kind of like keeping an eye on the numbers and things like that, how the response is. If people hate the game, then why bother, but I love it, and I know there's other people like me out in the world. There are people out there that are going to like it. So, if the response is good, then we'll look at expanding to different platforms, consoles, maybe mobile, whatever. There's nothing kind of set in stone right now. Yeah. And then, DLC or expanded content, things like that. Nothing's off the table at this point. It's just sort of like everything's in this flux of maybe and what if. And once we kind of get some more concrete information, then we'll start making decisions about what happens next. I do, however, have plans for like other games that I'd like to make after this. I mean, I've been working on this for 3.5 years. Of course, I'm going to get some other ideas. It's like, ooh, that would be really great, but it just doesn't fit with this game. Maybe I'll put it in the next one, kind of thing. So there's lots of things I want to try and lots of things I want to experiment with that might not necessarily fit for this game or for a DLC for this game or anything like that. But maybe a sequel, maybe a prequel. Who knows?
Oh, wow.
We'll see.
Nice. Can you give us like a little hint of what kind of, like, what type of game you would want to make after this one, or?
Well, I've always kind of looked at the Edge of Allegoria as like there's a lot of advice out there that never make your dream game as your first game. Like, always kind of scale it back. Don't try to be that perfect thing that you've always wanted. So the next game is what I want to make. I'm hoping that I can expand and actually make something like I love turn-based RPGs. Like, don't get me wrong. I love the Edge of Allegoria. It is the game that I've always wanted to play. But I have some ideas for more in the future. I'm just sort of using the Edge of Allegoria as my stepping stone to whatever could come next. And that one will be way different. It might borrow some mechanics or some elements from the Edge of Allegoria. Obviously, it's the same kind of universe, so there's going to be some shared elements. But I also want to take it in a different direction. I've been making a turn-based RPG. It's been all green. I'm definitely going to add some more colors to the next one, and maybe a little bit more real-time action rather than the turn-based thing. Nothing's set in stone though right now. It's sort of like I'm finally allowing myself to be like, okay, I can think about these next things now because this one's just about done. I can afford that shift in focus just a little bit at this point. And I'm letting my kind of mind run wild. So no guarantees of what it will be exactly yet, but it's definitely going to be different. That's awesome. Guaranteed.
Awesome. Are we getting the Steam Deck verified thing on?
I hope so.
I played it on my Steam Deck, and it's perfect. I don't have any problems.
I do that. That's how I do like all of my playtesting. I will sit down on my couch, put on some YouTube or Netflix or whatever, and be playing on my Steam Deck. Like, that is the way. I can't recommend it enough. Like, that is the way to play. It is a handheld game for sure. How I go about getting the Steam Deck verification checkmark?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a button that I've just missed on the Steam page that I gotta click. I've just forgot to click on or something like that. But getting Steam Deck verified would be super helpful because it's definitely something that I recommend playing on. It works just fine. It's just getting that green check mark to kind of validate all of my claims that it works great. But like honestly, it works perfect. So Maybe I'll talk to my publisher about how to go about doing that. They know way more about that sort of thing than I do. I just make games. I don't know how to. Yeah, I just make the game.
And seeing as this is coming out with the release of the game, so what are the differences? Like, if for someone who's tried the demo, such as myself, what am I getting when I buy the full game?
Well, the full game. I mean, you're going to get the full game when you get
As
the full
in,
game.
like, features and things. Yeah.
Yeah. So the demo more or less gives you a pretty solid slice to kind of get you into the mechanics and start giving you a little bit of a taste of what the story might be and the adventure. And then your save file carries over from the demo to the full version. There are a few areas that are blocked off that, you know, you can't break rocks because they've been disabled in the demo. But it's like once you get the full version, you just pick up right where you left off and carry on for the adventure. The demo is the first 2 to 3 hours of the game, and then it just kind of, you beat a boss and it cuts you off and like, okay, that's it. You're all done. Wait till the full version comes out and you can keep playing. And then, yeah, once the full version is out, then you've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 hours of gameplay, depending on how much you like to explore, how many secrets you want to discover, things like that. I like to say 20, but I recently finished a 100% achievement playthrough, and it took me 35 hours and I know where all of the secrets are. I know I was cheating, and it took me 35 hours to do that.
Wow.
So you get a lot more once the full game comes out. It's just like, okay, here you go, have the whole package.
Man, it's really interesting now that you just mentioned that. Like, what's it like playing a game that you designed yourself? What's that like?
It's weird. It's a little weird. Like, it's tricky for balancing and for kind of gauging difficulty, because I know all the tricks. I know all of the things, and I can kind of cheese my way through a little bit, because I know the best move sets to use. Like, once you find the right weapon, what you should be doing. So it's hard to gauge the difficulty, and my strategy might be different from what everybody else is doing. So that's kind of been a struggle also, at the beginning of the game, just coming up with the quote unquote tutorial, teaching how the game works. Like, I know all of the mechanics, so I had to make sure that I'm not glossing over anything or ignoring anything, so that I don't have, like, I may think that I've explained it, but maybe I missed a part that you know, it's like that. Like, that's I think the hardest part about the knowing everything and playing a game that I know is, like, I know everything about it. I know the story. I'm completely desensitized to any of the, like, the surprises or the shock of anything. So it doesn't register in my brain when, like, I meet a new NPC and I'm like, oh shit, that's kind of messed up, man. Or like, wow, that was really deep. It, like, really got me in the feels there. It was just like, yeah, that. Hey, wow. It's that character that I made. I remember that day when I wrote that character. I mean, and to be fair, there are some times, because the way that I looked at writing dialogue for some of these characters, I tried to put myself in the mindset of these people, and there's some stuff that I dug real deep and didn't know I had in me. It was like there was some stuff that I unlocked, like, from my past, that was just like, wow, I didn't know I felt that deeply about that particular subject. That was a lot of stuff. And, like, there was one time I wrote one of the storylines about halfway through, that I closed my laptop and I was like, I can't, like, that. Wow, that was too much. So, like, playing through that area, it was like playing through it again. It's like it's like, okay, like, now I understand where that came from, and I
Oh,
understand what it is. So it's like revisiting an old friend almost, and like,
that's
hey, how's it go?
fascinating.
How you doing now?
That's so
And like
interesting.
checking in on myself,
Yeah,
and like, do I still
yeah,
feel this way? Nope, I've moved on, I've grown, and it's like there's that little bit of a, hey, yeah, I figured something out, and now I feel better. It's cool to see kind of how I've
yeah.
grown as a person
Hmm.
since going going through all of these, situations that I put myself into in order to make these characters more believable.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Do you find yourself like when you're like consuming other video games, are you constantly
Oh God, yeah.
dissecting? Does that has that ruined video games for you, or can you
No,
sort of
it's
like
made it
separate?
so much better.
Oh
Because like
yeah.
I'm naturally a very curious person, and I like to figure out puzzles, and kind of like I was the kind of kid that would take apart my toys and see how they worked, or
Hmm.
I'm constantly like, if I get one of those clicky pens, I'm constantly taking apart, I put it back together. And so like now that I've kind of lifted the veil and can see behind the scenes of video games, like when I see a mechanic that really interests me, it's like, okay, how did that work? Like that's actually super cool. I gotta figure out, what went into that. How can I make that? How can I do something like that? What can I do to replicate that kind of thing? So it, it's made definitely made it harder to just sit and enjoy a game for what it is, because there's always that, oh, I know how they did that, or wow, that's really interesting. What could how did they do that? But at the same time, it's also kind of enriched it a little bit more, and I have a lot more of an appreciation for the games just as an art form, because of knowing the amount of effort that goes into it. Like I see these games with like hundreds of people on the teams, and it's like, so one guy did this one effect and that's it. And it's like, now I have much more of an appreciation for the smaller details. And like I wish I could, like, I wish I knew who the person was when the credits roll, like who's the guy that did that effect on that attack at that time. It's like, I gotta know, because that guy's super fucking cool. And it's definitely helped me find a much deeper appreciation for video games as a whole, as a like as an art form. Like it's there's so many moving parts go into each game. And definitely from a solo perspective, like whenever I see a game by a solo developer, like regardless of its success or its quote unquote quality, like I have so much respect for people that have developed games by themselves, because it's fucking hard, man.
Yeah, by the sounds of things, like I couldn't even just wearing different hats, like music and art and coding and writing and then community management, and it's
Mhm.
good job.
Thank you. It like at the same time too, though, developing solo, if you've got a difficulty staying focused on one thing at a time, kind of like I do, it's nice for motivation, because you could be working on the coding and the bugs and everything like that, and it was like, okay, I'm sick of this. I need something else, because eventually you're going to burn yourself out. So you can kind of shift your focus to, it's like, okay, I need a break from this. I'm going to do some music now. And then you work on some music. It's like, okay, I need a break from this. I'm going to do some art now. And then you work on the music or the art. And then you can kind of bounce between things to keep yourself. It may not necessarily be the most efficient. It may not necessarily be the most strategic way of doing things. But on a personal level, just to keep that momentum and keep that motivation going, it for me at least, it was really nice to be able to have so many different things to work on, so that I always had something to do.
I mean, reflecting on your journey,
Mhm.
making this game, what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of developing the Edge of Allegoria?
It's got to be, it has to be the responses I get. It like there's especially to the writing, because that was something that when I first started the game, like when I was working on my last game, and I had no confidence in my writing, and then coming into this game, being like, you know what, I'm just going to write it. I'm not going to care what people think. I'm not going to do that. And the like, I know I, there are a few of my Kickstarter backers and some members of my Discord that I've worked with, and the stories that they've told me, and I get emotional about it, because like being told, like hearing that my game was able to, like, it helped somebody laugh for the first time after having to go through a very intense surgery to have a brain tumor removed, and then not being able to feel that joy, and then playing my game and laughing for the first time was just like hearing from people that my work has helped them on a personal level is just the most rewarding thing. Like, it just feels so good to know that what I've done has helped in any small way. Like, the world is a hard place, and that's one of the themes of the game, is just like the world doesn't care. Like, the world's it's a giant place. We're all just tiny little people. But to know that my little green game has made a big impact in someone's life has been the most rewarding thing about this whole thing. It just, like, I can die a happy man knowing that I've made a difference in people's lives in some small way.
Wow, that's powerful. That's awesome. Do you have any advice for aspiring developers?
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. It's a slippery slope. I mean, like, it's hard. It's really, really hard, but like it is one of the most rewarding experiences. Like, to pour your heart and soul into something, and to be passionate about it, and to believe in your own dreams enough to chase them and to work for them. And to see it at the end, at the finish line, it's such a rewarding experience. So, like, and this, it doesn't necessarily have to go for indie development, just like anything in general. If you want to do something, there are no rules telling you can't, so you should. Just go out and do it. Just start. Doesn't matter if you think you suck at it, you'll get better. It doesn't matter if, people are like, oh, you're wasting your time, you're not going to be successful. Who fucking cares, man? It's like, it's your dream, it's your life, it's what you want to do. Go out and do it, and just don't stop. Just keep doing what you're doing, and then one day the little, like, things will start, the pieces will start connecting, things will just keep at it, keep banging your head against that wall, because one day you're going to break through, and there's a whole other world on the other side, and you'll get there, and it's going to be great.
Perfect. I'm going to go make my own game now.
Hell yeah, man.
And just the last one, I kind of asked this question. What's a question that you wish people would ask you about development, but no one ever does?
Everybody says, what's that? I'm trying to think of that meme. Everybody says, how's the game going? But they never ask, how are you doing? It's rough out here, man. No, honestly, like, any questions asking about the game. I love talking about it. Like, okay. I love making the game so much that, like, any questions. I love when people. I love to talk about it. I love to answer any questions. Like, it's my. I don't get to talk shop about games at all. So, like, asking about any facets of development, any of the inspirations, things like that. Like, it feels good to be able to communicate about things. And I think we've kind of talked about some of the, like, more recently, it's been like the feeling and the sentiments behind the game and the motivations with the story. I've started kind of getting some more mixed feedback particularly about the writing, which is the thing that I'm most self-conscious about. So being able to kind of talk about the art of it and the intention behind it and why it is the way it is has been like we kind of touched on that today. So I guess, what the reasoning behind going into the game with such a bad attitude, I guess, all the profanity, all of the innuendos and everything like that. Like, why did I choose to do that? And the motivations behind why the story is the way it is like, that's always been something that I've wished people would ask, but you did that today, and sort of like explaining how that, I'm using it as like it's a personal tool, like, and just other people enjoying it is just an added bonus. Like, this is a therapy for me. The next game will be therapy for me as well. Like, art is like a form of self-reflection and self-development. So and I look at making video games as an art form. So just being able to communicate that and express that has been, like, for me, has been the highlight of this whole interview. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
No problem. No, it's just, you blew my mind by the answers, because like I said, like, I looked at your game when I was going through the responses to see like who would be a good fit for an interview, and I was like, oh, like, it's green. And then I was like, okay, but like, that's different, right? That's different. So I'm like, let me have a look at it. Let me see what's going on here. And like, straight away, it was like, it's one of those games. Yeah. Like once you kind of pull back the curtain just a little bit, like it's one of those, you have to give it a try. That's right.
And that's like one thing, like it's there's that trope of just like the big hairy leather jacket spiked biker dude, but like he's really a softie. He likes the pink fluffy unicorns, and he's like, he looks really big and tough and scary, but he's really actually super nice. And that's kind of the vibe I wanted to bring with this game. It's like, it's super abrasive, there's the swearing and the jokes and everything in it, and like it might put people off, but like once you kind of scratch, it's not that far below the surface. Like you just kind of have to give it a little bit of a shot, and then it's like, oh shit, there's like there's a real game in there. This isn't just some immature guy who just learned what a swear word is. Just being a jerk on the internet. Like there's something else there.
No, you definitely connect with the right audience, I think, from the get-go. Like I was able to, like, right from the beginning with the fishing from an empty pond, like that gave me a good chuckle, So it was like, as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I need to talk about this,
Yeah.
So, but the game is out now, because like we mentioned at the beginning, this video is going to come out when the Edge of Allegoria comes out on December the 4th. So Joe, what would you like to add at the end? It's,
please, pick up the game. Follow me on social media. All my links will be on the Steam page.
And in the description down here.
In the description.
Yep.
Follow all my socials. Join the Discord. If you find any bugs, like I'm only one man, and the bug testing has been
nice.
So. But let me know if you find anything. I will fix it right away. I always appreciate feedback. Don't be too harsh. Hey, whatever. Be as harsh as you want. Really, it's your opinion is your opinion. So whatever you think of it, I'd love to hear it. But I do hope that you pick up the game, follow on socials, all of that sort of thing. I'd love to hang out in the Discord. And I hope you enjoy.
Will the demo be available alongside the full release, or is that going away?
Unless there's some sneaky plans to remove it, I think I want it to be available at all times. Like I think that the demo should always stay available.
So then, if you're not sure, just go and try the demo, because you'll be
Yeah, and your
convinced.
save file from the demo carries over to the full version,
Yeah.
as long as you got that Steam Cloud enabled, which everybody does by default. But if you have that available, then your save file will carry over. So you risk nothing by at least downloading, trying the free demo, and then if you do enjoy it, you can pick up the full version and just pick up right where you left off.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me. I can't believe we talked
Hey,
for almost
thank
two
you,
hours.
man.
No, that's all
I
right.
told you I'm a talker.
No, I
I
loved it.
warned
It's
you.
awesome. It's awesome.